mayor of Tinton Falls when she was the director of the Source. So I got a job working under her in the Source and met so many of the young people,
Yeah.
from Red Bank, black, white, Latino, Latina, that, some of these students I'm still connected with still today. As a matter of fact, my administrative assistant is one of the students that I knew from Red Bank Regional High School. I mean, she's good. She's definitely a good adult now, but yeah, that's where we met, so it's those ties that bind, so yeah.
Cool. All right, should we start up?
So, you know what? Let me just get a tissue.
Yeah, you want any water or anything? I don't know if you have any water here or anything. You want to drink a glass of whiskey?
Y'all just torn.
There's some booze?
No, I'm good. I got to go to a book club after this. I don't want to go tore up.
It's so funny because every time people ask, "Hey, are there any water here?" Ming just walks out the door so they can ask him. Then I feel bad that I don't have an answer.
Yeah. That's all right. I'm good.
Would you like this logo for the foundation over here, or would you like it over here, or because I can move it? Center.
I don't know. Do we want can you take the logo off? I like just being in front of the house. Or do you want the logo on there?
I like the logo
All right, put the
because
logo on
everybody might not know the house.
Yeah, you're right.
That's fine, right there.
Okay, cool.
Mhm.
All right. Well, we're rolling, so you can start whenever you're ready.
All right. I'll just do a countdown and go into it. 3, 2, 1. How you doing, everybody? Welcome to the Redbankgreen podcast. My guest today, one of my favorite Red Bankers, I have to say. I don't rank them, but Gilda Rogers, Executive Director of the T. Thomas Fortune Cultural Center.
You make me feel so special.
So good. You are special. Yeah. So good to have you here.
I'm glad to
It's
be
really
here.
cool.
Yeah, I'm glad to
really
be
cool.
talking to you. Yes.
Here at Shared Universe Podcast Studio. You never know this spot was here, right? It's cool.
Never.
Cool
Never.
spot. Ming Chen has.
Yeah, no, now I know. Yeah, I'm telling you, all kind of hidden treasures here in Red Bank.
Isn't it crazy?
Yeah, yeah.
Like the T. Thomas Fortune Cultural Center is one of the best. It is. That's a place that when I moved to Red Bank, was an old house that was falling apart, and then I slowly found the history of it and became enthralled with the history, knowing that it was right the Thomas Fortune House, an influential black journalist, and then this battle to save the place. Tell me about that, because I thought it was a goner, really, from a preservation.
Most people did. Well, the house was in total disrepair. It had been boarded up ever since 2006, right? I tell people often, like students that come to the Cultural Center for visits and others, T. Thomas Fortune found me. I didn't ever see myself doing this. And just to back up a little, so it's some lineage here, cohesiveness. I was working in the in the year 2000, as a managing editor for African American weekly newspaper in Newark called City News, and we won the T. Thomas Fortune Award.
Wow!
I never heard of him. I had never heard of this guy, and I had been to college, graduated, went to school for journalism. Never heard his name mentioned. And as it turned out, I did some quick research so that, I could accept the award and all of that and act like I, knew who this person was, and wondered, how could I not have ever heard of him before? And that all started, that was in 2000. And then by 2000, I'm living here in Red Bank.
Yeah, when did you move to Red Bank?
I moved to Red Bank in the early 90s. I originally grew up in Elizabeth, New Jersey.
From Union
Okay,
County.
so Union County. Hey, hey, that's right.
Right down around,
We
right
used
down
to-
Morris Avenue.
Yeah, we used to play, Union County High School Union High School when I was in
Elizabeth High School.
Elizabeth.
I went to Union Catholic.
Oh yeah,
They would
we were
kill
playing
us
Union
in
Catholic
baseball.
too. Yeah, so Elizabeth, I grew up there. I'm originally from Virginia. I was born in Virginia, but grew up in Elizabeth. I made my way to Red Bank in the early '90s. Came here, loved it. Well, really didn't love it at first. My grandparents lived here. I actually live in my grandparents' house.
Do you? Wow.
Yeah. And then, they died, and one thing led to another, and my mom, and so then I'm here. And so I'm going to school for journalism. And then in 2003, after I leave the newspaper, I went back to school to get my master's in history at Monmouth. And while I was doing research work for my thesis, I was doing research work over at the Schomburg in New York. I ran, rolling through microfiche and all of this stuff. I read that this person named T. Thomas Fortune had lived in Red Bank. So now I'm like, wait a minute. Just 2 years ago, a few years ago, we won the T. Thomas Fortune Award. Now here I'm working on my thesis, doing research work, and run across that this guy lived in Red Bank.
A couple blocks from your grandparents.
A couple blocks from my grandparents.
Amazing. Wow.
So, still, okay. I actually wrote about him in my thesis, all right, which became a book. Arrested Development, the State of Black Achievement and Education in Hip Hop America. So I write about Fortune once I discovered in the research, and kind of, again, didn't think about it anymore. And then in probably like around 2007, I think it was, Ed Zipprich, who was the councilman here at the time, and George, why can't I think? George Bowden, who was the historical commissioner of Red Bank. They approached me and said, Gilda, now this house, of course, I've seen this house because I live here in Red Bank.
Right.
I've seen it's boarded up. I would when I walked past it or drove past it, I would always admire it because even in its, its worst, I saw it had some grandeur, and I would say, wow, that house probably was really something special in its day, still not knowing who lived there. And then that's when, in 2007, George and Ed approached me and said, Gilda, by this time I had graduated with my master's in history. Do you know a famous journalist used to live in this house, and we're having this home put on the 10 most endangered the state's 10 most endangered historic sites. And then they told me his name, T. Thomas Fortune. And I'm like, oh, so,
This was all meant to be.
This
Wow.
is. So I tell people often that Fortune found me. I've been on this journey with Fortune basically now 26 years. We're in this 2026. So I first heard his name in the year 2000. And here we are now, not knowing that this house was none of this,
Right.
And I was going back to get my master's because people would say, oh, what do you want? You going to teach? So I said, yeah, I teach history. I said, but really, what I really would like to do is work in a museum. And that was, part of the criteria of working in a museum was to, have some history background, education. And so when everything is said and done, I actually created what it was. Mm-hmm. I created my own reality. I wanted to work in a museum. That's why I was going to school. And now here I am running the T. Thomas Fortune Cultural Center. Not a museum, but we have exhibits. People do see it as a museum. I see it more as a cultural center with black culture and history, housed there. But yeah, so that's how this and obviously it was a uphill climb to get the house in the
Right.
shape that it's in now because it was ready to actually fall down. And the people who had lived there prior to the Fortune family, because it had been in their family for over 100 years, they had filled out. They had filed for a demolition permit, and to make a long story short, the state stepped in because we were doing everything. Our little committee, we had formed a little community committee called the T. Thomas Fortune Project Committee to work to try to save the house. We didn't think we were going to ever raise enough money, but we hoped that someone, meaning the state, the historical commission, somebody would hear our call, and they did. And they came to our rescue, so to speak, and said that they would purchase the property, but it would be up to our committee to, restore and fix the house up and everything. And we were ecstatic over that because we didn't have any money. And then when the offer was presented to them, they rejected it from the state. So now we were back to, square one, nothing. And then we had an article that was written in the New York Times on Father's Day in 2015. And we actually were on the front page of the real estate section. And a building and developer here, Roger Mumford, read it.
Right. Oh.
And reached out to me. And I didn't know Roger. He didn't know me, perfect strangers. And
So he was developing that property with the townhomes in the back and apartments in the back, and then
no. So it all came together as one.
Right, as one thing. But when they built those apartments, then they were able to rehab the building and basically rebuild the Fortune House as part of that.
The actually the Fortune House was worked on first.
Right. But it was all part of one project.
It was one project, but that was Roger was doing the apartment building to underwrite what he was going to do with the cultural center and the funds and the monies that he would have to spend in there.
It turned out to be an interesting example of
private and public
partnership and a redevelopment that also had a really good preservation.
History. Yeah,
you could look around other places around this town of developments that are going on, and say, man, that could have been a model that might have been.
I think we're a model. I think we are a model for other municipalities and other places to do something like this. Roger actually, was generous enough to donate the cultural center back to the T. Thomas Fortune Foundation, which we are now. Which was originally the T. Thomas Fortune Project Committee. Now we're a 501c3, and so now we run and operate.
Yeah, but if you look at other places, there's about to bulldoze that whole block by Bridge in Oakland, where there's some architecturally significant buildings there.
I know.
No adaptive reuse ever came up in the conversation.
I know.
It's just bulldoze it.
It's really sad that people don't have that's what I can say about Roger.
Mm-hmm.
He had an appreciation for the history, number one, and he had an appreciation for the culture, number two. And so it was like he was a guardian angel that just showed up and was in tune with it. He wasn't doing this to get kudos, He was doing it because it was substantive. He had read about Fortune, all right, before he reached out to me to even engage me in his idea. He had already read up on Fortune and who Fortune was and what Fortune was about. So he had did his homework.
So you are now, this cultural center set up to celebrate and teach people Black history in Red Bank, but you're fighting headwinds. You're fighting headwinds on the national level, where there's a big effort
Yeah.
to
raise.
delete it.
Yeah.
But also on a local level too, with the African American and the Black community in Red Bank, which I'm looking at statistics, census stats. 1990, Red Bank was 20% Black population. By 2010, that was 12. 2020, 7.9, and then the 2025 estimate. This is like a community survey estimate. This came out in January, so it's not a full decade census, but 4.9%.
It's hard.
population.
That's. We pride ourselves, or we want to pride ourselves on equity, diversity, and inclusivity. But we have a big demographic that is no longer here. All right, it could be it's a number of things, many variables. I can't point to just one thing, but I know nothing. I don't think is being done to really make it so that it's inviting for people of color to live here in Red Bank. It's unaffordable. Number one, rents are $2,300 and up. The average person does not make that kind of money. I think back on my own growing up in Elizabeth, and I'm not that old, and my first apartment that I shared with my best friend, young people today can't have that kind of experience.
Right.
I had my first apartment when I was 19 years old by choice. Not because I had to move out of my mother's house or anything. It was that I wanted to get my own apartment, and I chose to work first as opposed to going off to college, and that's what I was able to do. Young people today cannot have that kind of experience, and it's sad because and you look around. I look around Red Bank from when time I moved here. And I understand that development and change happens, but it needs to be done, I think, more thoughtfully, with intention to say, this is what we're about. And we see those statistics. What can we do as a community, as a town, as a municipality, to make this a more inviting space and place for people not just to come here and socialize and be entertained, but to live. I love living here in Red Bank. I'm fortunate that I'm able to live here because my grandparents had lived here. All right? Because if I had to move here right now to Red Bank, I wouldn't be able to afford to live here. So it is to me, it's not what it's all cracked up to be in the sense of equity, diversity, and inclusivity.
Right.
As to what I see here in Red Bank now. It was when I first moved here. It was that, but now it's not. And I wish that our elected officials and building developers and everybody would come to the table and say we have to do this.
So the argument they would say is that if the development is not what drives the prices up, and then in fact that they would say that 20%, like the new train station project, is going to be 20% affordable units, which will go to local residents, and those will be affordable. But if you build more, then the price comes down. That's the YIMBY argument. The more you build, the more their supply and brings down. But so there's other factors too in that demographic change. Like it looks like from 20%,
even with
from
school, 20, even with you have to think about who's attending school.
Yeah.
All right. So who are your children going to school with?
there's a tipping point. I think, and it seems to have passed it. But there was so. What were some of the factors that's done that? Some of it was.
Well,
some of it is factors beyond Red Bank. There's been a kind of reversal of the Great Migration.
It is. It's
general.
a reversal of the Great Migration. People are because you know what? It's you get more bang
That's
for your buck
affordability too.
when you go south. You can live, like so much better than you can here at a less.
So some of this is unique to Red Bank and some of it's not. But it seems to be more intense. Like Red Bank went from having a higher than New Jersey African American population.
Yeah, 20%.
20% down to way lower.
Well,
so it's happening all over the Northeast and in the North, but it's happening faster in Red Bank. So some of it is national, but some of it is local, and it's more intense.
And I think even in the Black community itself that we're here. Like I said, I live in my grandparents' house, so when I moved here, it was mostly elderly people lived on my block, who had been my grandparents' neighbors. They died, and the homes were sold.
Right.
I happened to live in, so it was passed down to me, all right? I'm sure it was passed down to other family members of people that lived on the block, but for whatever the reasons, no one moved in the house. They sold these houses, so it didn't, maintain that kind of demographic once that elderly person passed away.
Right. So my block was mostly African American when I moved in, and I'm thinking like the older family, the parents died, but the kids had moved. They had gone to college and they had moved away, and they're not coming back to Red Bank.
And so that's
part of it too.
That's
right?
a part of it too. So that's a part of it too. But then you have to also be like, how are we trying to get more, new faces, here to Red Bank? Now, of course, we want a mixed economics, you know what I mean? Like, from those who are making up in the hundreds of thousands of dollars to others who have to have some help, like, affordable apartments, like you're saying, the 20%. I don't think they do enough, but I'm not in real estate, so who am I to speak about it? That's not where my bread and butter comes from. I'm looking at it from more of a sociological, or sociologist type of way. We say we are all in this together, but we're not living together. You know what I mean? We price ourselves so that only certain different demographics can live in these places.
Aside from the set-aside affordable housing units, which is the ones that are legally, there's nothing that's starter home or affordable built. There's nothing. The West Side is
you $500,000,
tear
like
downs.
$500,000.
Yeah,
it makes me laugh when I get, how they send you from the
$1 million.
They send you the, how much your property and all that is worth. When I get that,
I get so pissed off.
I actually laugh. I
get pissed off.
Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Somebody is gonna pay this kind of money for this house, and they will. And see, the thing, they will. But I think, so I could take, if I sold my house, I could take that money and move down south.
Right.
And live nicely, very nicely, and probably be able to put, a nice chunk in the bank, So I guess that's the payoff, if you want to stay in this like cosmopolitan area.
And a lot of African American families that I've seen do that still have ties to the South. They have cousins or relatives there that makes it easier to kind of
like my brother. Like my brother is retiring this year. He bought a house in Virginia, where we originally we were born. Yeah. So I have relatives there. So he's going to be living right next door to a cousin. So he's by 2027 he'll be moving back to Virginia. I happen to like it here.
I love it here too. I don't want, but let me tell you that one of the reasons that my wife and I moved here was the diversity. And,
Well,
and
that's
now we're looking at the Fairhavenization of.
that's our diversity. That's.
But, you know, maybe I started it.
I don't. No, I don't think so. I don't think so. I think we have to be more. You know, we have all this building and development, and look everywhere, but we're. It's all about like how much money can we make off of building this, and not really thinking about how do we make a society? How do we make a community? How do we make a community that we want our community to be? You know, I want to live in a community where it has all people, you know, and sure, the ratio and numbers might not be exact or the same, but we got to have better representation in the African American community for sure. You know, I remember as a child coming down to Red Bank with my grandparents. You know, my grandparents lived in Elizabeth, and then they sold their house in Elizabeth and moved to Red Bank because we had relatives that lived here in Red Bank, all right? And just the vibrancy of the black community. Yeah. I remember the Count Basie Field before it was called the Count Basie Field, like they were my relatives too, obviously, but they were much older. You know, they played like baseball over there in the field where is the Count Basie field now, and they lived right over there, and you could look out my cousin's backyard and see the Count Basie field and see the people out there playing baseball. And it was, you know, the black businesses that was here, like up on Shrewsbury Avenue. I remember it was, but.
Is there any black business left? The barber?
Mr. Gus. And,
Gus is there.
And my friend, Cleveland. The tailor. That's it. And see, that's it. That's the other thing. That's the other thing, too. If you're going to bring all of these developments in here, and when I say about socialization, and a lot of them are mixed use where they have retail downstairs and all of that, you got to give some access to, you know, have some black businesses. You know, invite black businesses in to take some of these, rent some of these spaces or lease some of these spaces, you know. We have to have that culture here. We don't even have a black restaurant here.
Right.
We have every kind of restaurant here in Red Bank, but not a black soul food. Doesn't necessarily have to be soul food, but just we don't have a black restaurant. That's black-owned business. That's restaurant that's selling food, that's selling good, high-quality, good food.
So amid all of this, you're keeping the Fortune Center. What did you mention to me before we started recording? You said if it wasn't for the Fortune Center.
Oh, if it wasn't for if the T. Thomas Fortune Cultural Center was not here in Red Bank, it would be as if black people never lived or thrived here at all. You could come to this town as a stranger and say, oh, no black people. And so if you don't see any black people, you're probably going to think there never were any black people here. But because the T. Thomas Fortune Cultural Center is here and we are keeping Red Bank history alive, you know, to let people know, no, Red Bank, the Parker family. Dr. James Parker was the first black doctor here in 1916. He was very good friends with A. Philip Randolph. Most people don't even know who A. Philip Randolph is, all right? Who was one of the most prominent black leaders, who was a good friend of Dr. Parker's, all right? If it wasn't for A. Philip Randolph, it wouldn't have been a march on Washington.
Right.
You know, so that is the kind of history that we're serving at the T. Thomas Fortune Cultural Center, because you don't get it in school. All right, I teach history, African American history at Brookdale. All right, and I can say within the last probably 4 years, I've been getting more white students taking my class, which warms my heart immensely, because that says to me, like, you know what? I want to know you. I want to know this history. I want to know that part that has been, you know, kept away or, you know, banned. I want to know it. And I just had a student, a white student, email me just a couple of days ago and said, I am glad I took your class. You know, everything you said, you know, was true. You know, like, I can connect the dots now. All right? And I told him, his name is Jackson. I was like, man, that really warms my heart, because that tells me that, you know, I touched you. All right? And you're going to touch somebody else. All right? Because when we understand the depth and the richness of African American history and culture, you know, I saw a saying by Malcolm Jamal Warner, who recently passed. And he said, slavery is white people's history. How black people survived it is black history. So it's more to us than slavery, all right? We've done some incredible things, monumental. Right there in the Cultural Center, you learn about Dr. Charles Drew, who, if it wasn't for him, we wouldn't have blood banks. He didn't say, oh, I'm just doing this. I just discovered how to, you know, preserve blood plasma just for black people. He did it for everybody, you know. And now we sit in a society now where they want to get rid of that, all right? When that just goes to show, you know, what kind of society we have morphed into, although we say, you know, I hear people say, oh, this is not who we are. Yes, it is. It's who we are. It's who we always been, who we always have been. And if we don't change and wake up, we see it's going to be our demise.
One of the things I've wondered about a long time living on the West Side is how much of that darker history played out in Red Bank too. And I'm talking about like I kind of looked at it. I did some reporting on deed restrictions in New Jersey at my old job, and I knocked on people's doors and I went up to them with the deed to the house and said, do you know your house was built for white people, on white people only? And people's jaws dropped, you know. And I know that I know some homes in Red Bank had those deeds, and I always wondered how bad the redlining was.
I'm gonna tell you right now. Yeah. I'm gonna tell you. My grandfather could not get a mortgage. He had a private mortgage from an Italian man, someone here in Red Bank, who he bought this house from. Yeah. All right, because he couldn't go in the bank and get a mortgage for this very modest. You know what our homes are. Yeah. We live in the same community. We're not.
Was that whole West Side just written off? Because I know the federal government was telling banks back in those days, in the 20s, when all those houses were built, 20s, 30s, you know, don't lend it. I mean, I've seen these maps. They're red, you know. So tell me more about that. Your grandfather.
I know it personally from my grandfather, because my mother showed me where he used to make his payments.
Wow, yeah.
Like a book.
Yeah.
Like a passbook, where he make his mortgage payment. He would go somewhere, wherever this person was, and make his mortgage payments and get it stamped or written in his book.
Probably at a higher interest rate than what the white people were getting from the banks.
Yep. Until the house was, you know, paid off.
So that was
Yeah, so this is the so we look around and see things like that and say, yeah, we got to do better. We have to do better.
Yeah.
You know, I'm telling you, I grew up in Elizabeth, like I told you. I grew up in the 60s, 70s. I had the best childhood, the best experience I could have as a young person growing up in Elizabeth because I went to school with every nationality and ethnic group on the planet. We all were friends. We just had our, 50th class reunion, right? Everybody that could be there, black, white, Spanish, Asian, everybody.
can't replace that experience.
We got down together and we even talked about it there at the reunion. Like, wow, we look around now and say, and we were like, that wasn't our experience. We all became really good friends and are still friends to this day outside of our own race.
Yeah.
So your community is where it starts. I grew up in a community where it was everyone, and then the white flight came in and changed it by the time I got to high school. But we had already been raised.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We'd already been raised. We had already formed these relationships with one another. These are adults that are doing this, not the kids.
Right.
The kids are having a good time with each other. It's the adults that's saying, oh, God, no, we must move now. It's too many black people. The schools are going to be bad, all right? When you don't allow your children to be involved with other cultures regularly, I don't mean for play dates.
So this is the dynamic that I spent my 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s escaping, because I grew up in Union, total white flight neighborhood. It was an all-white neighborhood of people who had grown up in Irvington.
Yeah.
Middle class. It couldn't be the more middle class. The one guy was a baker. The one guy was a plumber. It was all blue collar.
Yeah, because Union would be like the suburbs of Irvington, like.
Yeah, but there were two black neighborhoods. There's the Vauxhall and Brookside in Union.
Yeah.
And it never made sense until I older and studied the history and looked at the redlining and what had gone on. But I grew up in that neighborhood with that mentality, and then got into my 20s and was like, so I lived in Hoboken and Jersey City, on the west side of Hoboken before it gentrified in Jersey City, then moved to Trenton.
So
And no, but when you grow up in that kind of a staid environment, I was like, I don't want to live in a neighborhood with a bunch of people that look like me. I want to look like a bunch, that gets boring. So you crave that, and then I moved to the west side of Red Bank, where I found it, and now it feels like it's
gone again.
Slipping away again.
You know what it is? Because you recognize, I recognize appreciation for all cultures. That all cultures are important to embrace and to be a part of. It just makes your life richer.
This reminds me of when my wife and I were looking to move to Red Bank. We're a teacher and a reporter, right? First of all, we couldn't afford the east side of Red Bank.
Mm-hmm.
We looked around. This was 2003. We want to move to the west side of Red Bank. This was like reverse. This is like when they won't show the black people a house in the white neighborhood.
Yes.
Like they've done these stings for real. We get in the car and we tell west side of Red Bank. We were looking for a house if it's down the west side of Red Bank. We get in the car. They kept driving us to the east side of Red Bank, and we'd get out of the car like, this is not. No, this is not what we're talking about. It was like they assumed.
Yep.
We did not
want to be on the east side. I mean, on the west side.
And Deanna, she
Yeah.
grew up in Queens.
Yes.
She grew up with the
Yes.
background exactly like yours, with every type of person thrown together.
Yes. And it makes you just.
Yeah.
I think it's foolish. I think it's really foolish of people. And I would say it's mostly white people who do it. Because black people are, according to economics, they live in where they have to live.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But predominantly those white folks who can afford, they will not put themselves in that kind of environment. Now, I'm not advocating for you to go live, you know, in the hood or whatever, but I think you need to be in a neighborhood where your children are
Yeah. Yep.
exposed to all nationalities and ethnicities. Because as a kid growing up, I remember going home. We used to have to go home for lunch. That's how old I am. We used to get out at lunchtime to go home for lunch and then come back to school, all right? I remember I used to go home with my little Jewish friend, Ruthie Goldberg. I'll never forget her. I had my little Spanish friend, Anna San Juan. All of these people that go into you, and I never, ever, that's the best thing that my grandparents gave me. They, when we lived in Elizabeth, they gave me the gift of people. When you give your children the gift of people, your kids can rock and roll anywhere. All right? We had white people in our house, gay, lesbian, you name it, Spanish. We had all these people in our home because I had a cousin that lived upstairs. He worked at a lumber yard. So he had his white buddies. They had families. They would bring their kids over. Their kids would play with us. It was my grandmother's beautician looked like Little Richard. I was a little girl, but I didn't know that was a gay man. I just thought in my mind, this guy looks like Little Richard. But then as I grew older, he would be at our house too, but he had a shop. He would come. Yeah. As I grew older, I was like, oh, his name was Otto. I was like, oh, Otto was gay. So we had that in my house. So when I'm around and people say, oh, somebody told me, oh, Gilda, you seem so well adjusted. You seem so comfortable. Because I am.
That's the gift. I can't help. I know this is a tangent. Elizabeth, did you ever read the Judy Blume book?
Judy Blume is from Elizabeth.
She's from Elizabeth.
Yes.
But she wrote a book about the plane crashes.
Yes.
In 50s.
Someone was just
in the
telling
50s,
me.
3 planes crashed within 2-month period. Jetliners calling into Newark Airport crashed right into neighborhoods in Elizabeth. And Judy Blume lived in that, she lived in Elizabeth at that time, and she wrote a book based on it's a fiction. Anyway, I didn't. When you're telling me about Elizabeth back in that era, that's what I'm.
But yeah, that's how I grew up. So I had a blessed childhood growing up because I was introduced to all, and so that's my worldview, and that's the world that I want to see. And that was the world that I moved to when I moved here to Red Bank. It was like Elizabeth. It was like Elizabeth, but smaller, and it was by the beach. I could go to the beach. But now...
Perfect. I mean, it was like...
It was.
It really is the perfect... Like when we were looking at a map of New Jersey and where to live, where it's like beach, art,
everything,
population,
theater,
I needed one good Irish pub, one
good
art house theater, one good place to see music. Just as long as it had all these boxes, and diversity was like, wow, this is I hear you see these people complaining about Red Bank and on like Facebook and stuff. It's like, have you ever lived anywhere else? I don't know.
And like my daughter,
it's pretty great.
My daughter is she teaches culinary and she's a chef, and I keep telling you have to open a restaurant here in Red Bank, so I don't know.
You were saying she was trying to move to.
She's trying to find an apartment here in Red Bank, but the apartments are so astronomical that, and she's can pay like $2,000, but she can't even find nothing for $2,000. To me, that's like insanity.
So they were going to do this. I don't know where the mayor and council are on this, but like Princeton and these other towns have passed an ordinance where you can create an accessory dwelling unit in the backyard, like like an apartment. And I was like, oh man, that might be the ticket for my wife and I. We build a little 1-bedroom cottage in the backyard and give the front house to the kids, And we get old in the backyard.
I might build one in mine.
But they haven't moved on that. I don't know where they're at on that.
I have enough space in my backyard, that I could build a little something.
Yeah.
But it's really sad.
Yeah.
It's really sad that this is where we are in 2026 with housing.
Yeah.
All right. And I just hope and pray that the world that I grew up in finds its way back.
So what's coming up at the Cultural Center? What can we talk about going on there?
Well, this weekend we're having, so if people could come out, we're actually having historian Rick Gefkin there on Sunday. He's written.
That's Sunday, what, February
15th.
All right, I got to try to get this posted before then. I'm not sure if this will be posted before then.
He's written a book called Revolutionary Rivalry, and it's about Colonel Ty.
Oh my God, I can't believe you mentioned Colonel Ty.
Yeah, it's about Colonel Ty.
I was going to bring him up. All right, keep it.
It's about Colonel
I got to talk about him.
Ty and Captain Huddy.
I'm obsessed with Colonel Ty. I'll tell
Well,
you.
so then you should come.
Oh my God.
You should. So Rick is doing a book signing. So he's coming to talk about the book that he's done about Colonel Ty and Captain Huddy.
Oh my God.
It's going to be a book signing, and then some of the proceeds from the book signing go to the Cultural Center.
So let me make sure I have this straight. Colonel Ty was he enslaved or was he free?
He was a British loyalist.
He was a British loyalist.
Yes.
Living in Monmouth County, and he would lead the British troops on these because he knew the land so well, and he would lead them on these raids. There was one in Tinton Falls, right? But his story so underscores the complexity of African Americans' role in the Revolution, where a lot of them were on the loyalist and the British side because we're gonna risk our lives to go back into slavery.
I might have been on their side too. I would have been on their side.
Anyway, that's such a fascinating. So Colonel Ty, I read once where he was leading this raid up from like Sandy Hook up to Tinton Falls, where there was an iron ore mill. At the falls.
Yeah, at the falls.
So from my house, I can just about see the swimming river, right? I can see like glimpses of it when there's no foliage in the winter. And I gotta tell you, whenever I look at that river, I
think about
imagine Colonel Ty sneaking up, leading a bunch of British troops past my house, where my house is, sneaking up to go knock off these guys at Tinton Falls. And I just like that history. I get goosebumps thinking about it.
So you should come check.
Oh my God, I have goosebumps.
So he's gonna be there, and his book signing starts, or his author talk starts at 2 p.m. And we're also having that day an open house for Cedar View, Friends of Cedar View, for Cedar View Cemetery.
Cedar View Cemetery.
So people will be there for that too, just to talk about that, because Cedar View, I was on the board, I'm no longer anymore, but obviously still want to be connected to them. Cedar View is on the Black Heritage Trail. Mm-hmm. Many Civil War veterans are buried out in Cedar View Cemetery, which
that's in Middletown, right?
In Middletown, right there by St. Leo's on Hurley Lane. So I think, come on out, engage, find out some history there. This is Black History Month, and Rick is going to be there at 2. And then on the 22nd, we're showing the film, one of my favorite films, The Free State of Jones. Have you ever seen it? With Matthew McConaughey?
No.
Your producer over there
Christian's
has
seen
seen
it.
He's
shaking his head.
Isn't it a good movie? It's a good ass movie. Yes, I used to show it to I still show it to my students who take my class, because the movie is with Matthew McConaughey and with Mahershala Ali.
Oh, wow.
And Mahershala Ali is an enslaved person, and Matthew McConaughey is a Confederate defector. And they meet up they become like brothers, all right? But the movie is poignant because Matthew McConaughey really awakens in those Confederates. What are you fighting for? What are you getting out of it? You know, and the thing is, it's a true story. See, it's a true story. It's not like it's not fiction. And and it leads to the 14th Amendment because it takes place at the tail end of the Civil War. So it takes us through the 14th Amendment and the 15th Amendment, where black men get the right to vote.
Wow.
And I'm not going to spoil the ending, anything like that, but I would say that movie is good to see right now, so people should come out and see it, because on April 1st, the Supreme Court will be hearing arguments about birthright citizenship, which is part of the 14th Amendment. So the 14th Amendment, 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment, which, you know, they consider to be those amendments made on behalf of enslaved people. So we're going to learn some things about birthright citizenship, all right? Because it was applied to African American people, right? And so now that's the fight, that Supreme Court. So, I mean, if you want to learn some background and history and see a really, really good story, true story about one man. And that's what I like about the movie, who stood up. who stood up. Producer over here, no. He stood up and he took them on.
All right, I got to see this movie.
And he changed some things. So that's what's going on at the Cultural Center.
So I was going to upload this on Monday, but now because you're mentioning this event this weekend, I got to try to hustle and try to get this podcast uploaded.
Or get it up for the 22nd. You know,
but Colonel
Ty, you want to come see? You want to come? I mean, Rick has a whole slide thing, show, and everything.
I lie in bed thinking about Colonel Ty.
How did you learn about Colonel Ty?
I don't know. I'm just a history nerd.
So you're a history nerd too?
I was a history major in college. Anything Revolutionary War.
I think journalism brings us that. It because when I went back to school to get my master's in history, I was like, why? Because I'm like, I'm not going to go to school to get a master's in journalism. You know, either you know how to write, or you don't, or whatever.
I always tell students, when I speak to college students about journalism, I'm like, you a journalism major? Change it. Get economics. Learn a language. I always say learn a foreign language. Anyway,
learn a language.
That saved my skin.
Learn a language.
Learn Spanish.
Learn a language.
All right. That was fun.
Yes,
it was great talking.
Thank you.
Man.
Thank you. Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
It was a longer time.
I enjoyed
All right,
it.
Gilda Rogers. Thanks a lot. Take it easy, everybody.
Bye-bye.